Order! Order! You are an incorrigible delinquent at times. Behave yourself, man!
Now, today marks some major changes in the level of the benefit cap. Since 2013, households have not been able to receive more than £26,000 each year in benefits, including child tax credit, housing benefit and job seekers allowance. From today, though, that's being reduced to £23,000 in London and £20,000 elsewhere in the UK. The cap, which is set to affect 88,000 households, primarily with high rents or large families, was announced by former Chancellor George Osborne in his budget last July as part of a £12 billion of welfare cuts. But the Institute of Fiscal Studies says the cap will save the Treasury only about £100 million a year, a fraction of what was projected. The GMB union have described the cuts to the benefit cap as a monstrous new assault on 40,000 single mothers, while the Resolution Foundation said that it will worsen an already challenging outlook for living standards, and the Gingerbread Group said it is likely to drive more single parents into poverty. But this morning, Work and Pensions Secretary Damien Green defended the changes.
All the evidence is that the best route out of poverty, out of problems with money, is to find a job. And the benefit cap is not just fair on everyone, particularly on people paying taxes so that we can pay out the benefits, but it also encourages people to find work, and that's the best thing for them.
Damien Green there. Is he right, Liz Kendall, to say reducing the benefits cap will naturally encourage more people to find work?
Well, that's not what the evidence has shown so far. I think the IFS said only around 5% of people were incentivised to go into work. And I'm not sure it will necessarily save that much money either, because obviously there's got to be an increase in emergency payments for families who might end up being homeless. Even more importantly for me are the number of children that it will push into poverty. In my own city of Leicester, 3,000 children are going to be worse off. 75% of the people affected are lone parents. If we want to help people get into work, we're going to have to deal with the real issue, which is the lack of affordable housing and high rents and big increases in housing.
Do you accept, though, that there is an issue of fairness at the heart of this? And why should taxpayers in work subsidise those staying at home to have basically a better quality of life? If you think £23,000 is equivalent to £29,000 or thereabouts before tax, well, that's more than many working families earn.
Look, I really understand the sense, and I've heard this knocking on doors in my own constituency, that people want a fair system, that people should work if they can. But many people are actually in work but suffering from poverty and on housing benefit because of the high costs of housing. So I think that there's a lot of myths around about who is actually benefiting from the support they currently get. If you look at things like universal credit, actually many of the people who are going to end up worse off as a result of the changes are in work. You know, we have more people in work who are poor than ever before. So let's at least do this based on the facts.
I mean, Jacob Rees-Mogg, Theresa May has made it a key part of her premiership to say she was not going to govern for the privileged few, but for the have-nots, or those who are literally sort of struggling above the watermark. How does reduction in benefits cap square with that?
I think it precisely squares with that, because what she is looking at is fairness between people who are on benefits and those who are not on benefits. You pointed out that it's equivalent to gross £29,000 a year, that it is unfair that people who are dependent on benefits should be better off than people who may be working very hard to earn that £29,000
even if they're pushed into poverty, some of those, because the figures show that 116,000 of the poorest households in the UK will be hit by this reduced benefit cap. In the end, the cost will be greater to the taxpayer.
Your figure's just changed in 5 minutes, because the figure you had a moment ago was 88,000. So I don't know why you've suddenly changed by 24,000 people. But
because if you take both the cap levels, so the one in London and the one outside London,
but anyway, different figure earlier. I think it's fair. It is fair that people who are not working are not better off than people who are working.
Right.
And that if you're paying taxes, and you may be paying taxes earning £20,000 a year, is it fair that somebody should be earning more money than you out of the taxes you are paying?
Right.
I think the answer is it is not fair.
Is it fair to put more people into poverty who may not be able to pay their rent because of the high housing costs, not just in London and the South East, but outside, because there are two different cap levels, and in the end taxpayers will have to fund either bailing these families out because they're put out onto the streets and they're left homeless?
I think, as Damien Green said, the best way out of poverty is work, and I think that's correct, and you want to
Which a lot of them are
incentivise,
working.
you want to, well, the benefits cap is primarily affecting people who aren't working. I think Liz had a point on where working tax credits are affecting working families and universal credit, which wasn't in the original design of the universal credit. And I think that's a very valid point. But I think on the cap, it's absolutely fair, and people will have to adjust their circumstances to live within the cap.
Right. I mean, and on that, it was a popular policy. The Tories won the election with that as part of their manifesto, because many of your voters feel angry, as you have said, about what they see as unfairness in the system. So there is a mandate for this.
Well, you'll know that last year, quite unsuccessfully, during the leadership election, I argued that one of the reasons why people didn't support Labour was they didn't trust us on welfare
Indeed.
or on the economy. But look, what I'm bothered about is getting to the... It is absolutely true. Labour's the party of work, and work is the best route out of poverty. But for many families, the real problem here is about the costs of housing. Yeah. And, you know, I'm seeing in my own constituency an increase in the number of people evicted because they can't afford to pay their rents. We've got 12,000 people already on our housing list, and my real concern is if the impact of this cap is to make more people homeless, that will cost the taxpayer more, and that's not what people have voted for.
Right. I mean, how do you deal with that? I mean, it is a housing problem, isn't it? And ostensibly, if rents were cheaper, then you may be able to do this without making even more challenging environment for many, many families, particularly those with a large number of children.
We clearly have a housing problem in this country. We're not building enough houses. We need more new houses to be built. There are programmes that are looking to do that.
Can you reduce the cap before that has actually been rolled out?
I think the cap is a separate issue, that you do need more housing.
It's really related.
But that you were paying into the hundreds of thousands of pounds to a small number of families when there was no cap. It is perfectly reasonable to have a cap and say people must find housing that is within that cap. That is separate from saying that there is a general shortage of housing in the country.
I mean, look, I just don't see it in my own constituency, where it's not just that there's not enough social affordable housing or social housing,
which successive governments have been terrible at.
There's been successive problems with, but also that private rents are going up and up and up, and actually some landlords are now selling up because the local housing allowance was frozen since 2014 and they're not getting the same market rents. So I think the two are inextricably linked, and real welfare reform is about dealing with these issues together, not penalising people who don't have other options.
Let's leave it there.
I've been getting away with it all